welcome to episode 6 of Up the Waterfall.
Woo! 6? Who knew?
Yeah. So hopefully if you are listening to this for the first time, up until now, our episodes have not needed to happen in a certain order, but this is now part 2.
Yeah, I would say if you're listening to this now, you should go back and listen to episode 5.
Yes.
First.
This is part 2 of an EPCOT series, which may go to 3 parts. We aren't sure at this point in time. We're just going to go. Part 1 included
Our
Future
overall
World
thoughts.
East.
Yes.
So Spaceship Earth, Universe of Energy, World of Motion, and then Horizons.
Horizons.
We touched a little bit on Communicore East.
We even touched a little bit on Communicore West.
We did. So now we're going to jump right in.
Woo!
I will say again that this is, more of our personal history with EPCOT. We are EPCOT history buffs. You probably know
I think so.
many more facts and figures than I do, given
I
you
don't
have,
know.
well over 100 EPCOT books.
100. Come on.
Okay, well,
Hundreds.
hundreds of EPCOT books among your thousands of other books
There you go.
that are
I have a
Disney
few.
related. So we aren't going to get into all of, the black and white facts. Only we're going to talk about how EPCOT made us feel and why we became super diehard EPCOT fans.
Very much so.
So that said, we're going to jump right in and go to, I guess chronologically, we'll go to the land.
It has to be the land.
And then we'll add Living Seas. I do want to end on
But not only
Imagination.
that, Imagination was not opening.
Yes,
was not open
that's
on
right.
the opening day. So
It
on
always
that
has
other
a
side,
different anniversary date.
March 5th, in fact, of 83.
It's weird.
So, so from October 1st of 82 through March 5th of 1983, on that other side, there was The Land,
The
presented by
Land.
Kraft.
Yes. And I always did love The Land.
Oh, me too. Loved it.
I think The Land was the most relatable of all of the pavilions because it did talk about the future of farming, but everything that you went through, especially with Listen to the Land boat ride.
Yes.
That is correct, right? It's not Living with the Land is now.
It changed.
Listen to the Land original boat ride was all very like, oh, this is, things I could do if I really felt the inclination in my backyard.
I felt it was kind of, they were showcasing what could be done.
Yeah.
With the limited land, if you will, or basically, even it seemed like they were growing everything in sand. It kind of seemed that way. So.
Let's start from the beginning.
Yes.
The outside of
way
the
over
land
far.
pavilion has the amazing mosaic tiles, which
So beautiful, and I guess
will never be touched.
Yeah, it kind of represents the strata, if you will, of just the land, and it's interesting that they are mirrored images of themselves, with a very few exceptions.
And what was fun about the land was that it was kind of up on a hill, which at that point hadn't really. Well, I guess Haunted Mansion was up on a hill, but you didn't really go up the hill.
Right, you
to get
had to
into
go
it.
up and you still do have to go up a pretty significant hill to get to the second floor.
Yes.
And there's a whole first floor.
And then you could walk to the railing and look over to see the super fun seating area and the attractions that were downstairs.
I love the open concept of that and the little balloons.
Yeah, it was
that
always
were
just such a
above
fun place to be. And despite our previous discussion that we only went to table service restaurants, that really was one of my favorite quick service places because back then, when I was definitely not a vegan or vegetarian, they had barbecue there at one of the little stands.
Yeah, there were probably 8 different kind of like mini restaurants, and they each had their own kind of line.
Farmers Market, it was called back then. It wasn't Sunshine Seasons.
So I remember there was one for like just potatoes. You had a potato bar.
That's right.
And the barbecue one, that was my favorite too.
And to me, like I wasn't a huge barbecue person coming from Massachusetts, but the barbecue tasted the way, which we didn't even talk about in Spaceship Earth when you went through Rome burning.
Oh, yes.
So I always thought
It
of that.
smells like
and
barbecue
that's
sauce.
how I judge all barbecue sauces is whether it tastes to me like Rome burning smells on Spaceship
Because
Earth.
there are some, there's Carolina barbecue sauce, vinegar based, and there's mustard based, and then
podcast.
there's, sweet, but then there's also smoky.
Yes.
And the smoky barbecues is the one that smelled like Rome burning.
And then, of course, for a time there, that was where the infamous handwich.
The handwich was there. Yes.
I honestly can't remember if I ever had a handwich.
I did. It wasn't as defining to me, Epcot defining to me as it was to a lot of people.
People just like glommed onto it because at the time it was
definitely a unique concept.
Yeah, it was
to
a
be
unique,
able to hold
weird
a
thing that did not last very long. So much like the giant-headed characters that walked around World Showcase.
Oh, that's right.
It kind of is like an urban legend, if you will,
I suppose.
Epcot dining. But anyway, so yeah, on the second floor when you walked in, there was, of course, you got to Symbiosis.
Yes, which is just a film I actually loved. And yes, I suppose since it was talking about all the different, farming techniques and also how the earth was being treated at the time and how maybe there are some potential dangers. And the best way to kind of cohabitate with the earth, which is, I guess, what the word symbiosis means.
Yes.
To me, I very much enjoyed it. It was fun to see the Rice Institute, which was a nice feature in there.
I don't remember. I probably saw that movie maybe 3 or 4 times, maybe a handful. Because
the movies,
little me, it was always super loud. Like there was a scene where they were cutting down all the forest with the chainsaws, and I was like, it's too loud. I don't want to go and subject myself to this.
I think that was the point, though. It was trying to explain
it was jarring
that
and
was very harsh, but for a reason.
My Apple Watch band comes from, you can't really see it too much all together here, but that features the infamous wall carpet. You can purchase this at Go Away Green on Twitter if you'd like to. How Bowers makes these things and sells them in his little shop.
Very
so
cool.
check
And
that out on Twitter if you want to get
the
one of your own.
The legendary Epcot wall carpet, which has become kind of
and this has
a thing.
Been a good quality band. It's only $6, everyone.
Oh my. Hello.
Price is subject to change. But anyway, you could go in and pet the wall, and that was really fun. They've recently spruced it up a little, I believe, so it's still there in its full glory.
Yes, but I mean, the Symbiosis was another one of those concepts where it's showing, kind of the more educational parts of that, that pavilion's themes, whereas the more fun would be, I would say, the boat ride, the Listen to the Land boat ride, or it was Living with the Land.
Listen to the Land.
That's right. It's
been so long that we've
heard it,
adopted the new name.
Like even just the restaurant upstairs, which is also upstairs. There was the Good Turn restaurant.
The Good Turn restaurant was a favorite of mine growing up because we enjoyed table service restaurants.
I never went there. It was so fascinating.
It was such a fun concept. Growing up in Massachusetts, there was, I think it was the Hyatt, don't hold me to that, had a restaurant that turned around, and it was in downtown Boston, and you could see all of Boston as you were going around. We went there for like Mother's Day one year, I think. So this concept was always fun and exciting to me. And we loved going there. The best part, of course, was that you passed over the top of Listen to the Land. So you could see
different portions.
The little edge of the rainforest scene and the desert buffalo, not desert, the prairie scene with the buffaloes.
Yes, because there's this scene which we'll get to when we get to the boat ride. It had the desert atmosphere, the prairie atmosphere, and then the forest.
American farm.
Well, I was going to say the rainforest. I guess it started with the rainforest.
Starts with the rainforest, yes. And then you end up with the farm. So when you were on the restaurant, you could hear the little rooster cock-a-doodle-doing the whole time.
And the barking of the dog as well.
Then, I honestly don't know if this is still the case today. We haven't been there in a couple of years. But they used to feature like salads at least. Like the cucumbers would be from the Listen to the Land boat ride that they would be growing down there, and other vegetables too.
As well as with the aqua farming that they did, they would serve the little fishies.
Oh yeah. I honestly don't know if that's still the case. Because, Epcot and Walt Disney World has grown so much in attendance since then. But that was a fun experience up there. And then, of course, downstairs, do you want to listen to the land first or head to?
I would say listen to land, because that is usually where I headed first.
Yes.
We're heading to that boat ride. And if you may remember back then, and this was the best part of that, it was actually narrated by a cast member.
An actual human being sat on the boat with you.
Yeah, and would essentially narrate the entire attractions. And I can imagine
the
little
This is about the papaya.
Yeah.
And that was the best thing ever. And if you can imagine, like, it's similar to the Jungle Cruise in that way, in that you would have to memorize a giant spiel, but with so many technical terms, especially when you got into the greenhouses and having to know all the different facts about everything that's going on in there. I just can't even imagine how they would
occasionally change if they had a different, crop that they were trying out. But yeah, it was always fun. Sometimes you couldn't understand what they were saying, but that was still that they had signs, which they still have now on the side.
I just very much respected that, the cast member that was always on the boat with me, because
powder blue jumpsuits.
That is right. Always had the. That's right. But that was just fun. A very unique thing that they really didn't have many other places, and so that was fun.
Yeah, and seeing. You went through, similar to we were saying, the other pavilions will show you the history of whatever the topic is into the future possibilities. So that did start you out with like just a film, really, after you went through the...
Yeah. After you went through those environments and then through the American farm, it then took you into the barn, if you will, where they showcased kind of like some current cropping. Or actually, I guess it started with some historical... portions of farming, and then how things are happening now, and then some very interesting futuristic things that are happening now.
Yeah.
So.
And then you went, of course, out into the greenhouse, and that was always like a shock from the air conditioning. You would
because
get
it was
greeted
always
with the Florida humidity.
A lot warmer and more humid. But that's also where it took you into that domed room, which has that wonderful dome. Very reminiscent of, you can imagine, the top of Spaceship Earth, like what we had mentioned earlier.
And domes were cool in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Like, people enjoyed them. It was always fun, which I always forget this, and every now, because we don't go into the land that often at night, but when you go through the boat ride at night, it's really a fun experience to be in that domed room and see just like the total black darkness above you.
So I definitely recommend you doing that.
And it's always fun to see what they're growing, and they always had the weird little like no soil, and that you would see the roots hanging down and going through these watering
they tried
systems.
Different hydroponics, the different ways of growing things without having to grow them in the earth. So there were some that were on A-frames, some I guess that they were trying out on these little conveyor belts where you could see the roots coming out. They still have those.
Yeah, and of course the little centrifugal
force things, because they had those
centrifugal.
They had some things that they had actually brought out into space and on the space shuttle.
And they worked with NASA.
That's right.
There's still a sign there that says that. And then of course, was it originally you could see into the laboratory, or was that like a later on thing? I don't remember that from the very.
I think it was original, but. They didn't make it as prominent.
Yeah, there's actually people in there every now and then.
Yes.
And of course, not that this is original Epcot history, but there is the behind the scenes tour.
Yes.
Which is still the best value on Disney property.
Very
I
much
think it's only like $40.
And it was always unique. As you would ride through this attraction, you would see like a group of maybe 10 to 12 people walking through, and like, hey, how do I get to be part of that? So.
It is raining out a lot right now, speaking of Florida weather, so I don't know if that's going to come up on the microphone or not.
Hope
we
not.
are right next to a window. Anyway, behind the scenes tour is really cool. Everyone should definitely do that.
Yeah,
I haven't done it in a while. So
I didn't do that in my early Epcot years.
I didn't do it until like 5 years ago.
Oh, okay.
But it is a fun experience. And
that's right.
Aquaculture, we didn't mention
that's
that
right.
before? It was
Well-
always fun to drive through or sail through the red.
Because I remember seeing that
Boats,
the
yeah.
the picture. I think you even have it right there.
Yes, that's what
the
reminded
boats kind of going through a very red environment, and that's because it was essentially, what was it? That's a red,
I don't know why it was red.
kind of like a
It's
red tunnel. I guess it was probably to keep the fishies
Mm,
calm. I'll bet.
Aquacell.
That's right. So basically, it was just so they grew fishes there that they would actually serve in the restaurants. So that was
Yeah.
fun too, and that I guess that was a transition between two of the different greenhouses.
And they had baby alligators in there at some
Oh,
point.
yeah.
Do they still have them there?
I'm not sure.
I don't know that they have them in there.
Last time I was there, they didn't. They
Yeah, I
had
think
shrimp.
there's like a reason for that.
Sometimes they had shrimp in there. So very unique things.
Indeed.
And eels. I
Always
remember when they had
fun.
eels in there too.
Yeah, and it, of course, changed at some point in time. Semi-recently, Christian may look that up for us. We get a date where it became living with the land.
That's right.
And not listening to the land. We weren't listening anymore.
That's when they primarily changed that introductory scene where you would kind of go through a little forest
Mm.
before you got into those environments. But I guess the main feature was that they
They took out
nixed
the cast member narration.
the cast member that rode with you and narrated the whole way through. They actually put on a pre-narrated spiel
Yeah.
throughout the
and
entire show.
Is that when that happened? It was Listen to the Land all the way up until that?
I think so.
You're our researcher. Let
I'm
us
trying to
know.
find-
Somewhere in the, I'm sure it was in the 90s, probably mid
Yeah,
to
I mean,
early
it
90s.
wasn't that long ago. I know
Well, if you
I
think about
lose,
that, that was 20 plus years ago.
yeah, I tend to lose.
Because I went
Time
on it before it
flies.
had narration. But I didn't think I'd ever been on Listen to the Land.
Well, we'll see. Anyway.
Additionally, they took out the song
Oh, that's right.
"Listen to the Land,"
That was
which
a fun song.
I don't know who thought that was a good idea. I mean, it was a very folksy, 70s-ish song, but there's certainly other places where that's a good thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
but it certainly added to the whole Epcot music repertoire, which
Yeah.
was a very fun thing, as we spoke about earlier.
yes,
Replaced December 10th, 1993.
93.
Once again, the
94
1993,
is-
1994
yeah.
range is really when a lot of things happened at Epcot, and not always in the best way, and usually not. But
That's
we'll
crazy
get
because
into
it really feels like that was just like a few years back. This is what happens when you get old, kids. Everything morphs together, and it's like, that was just yesterday.
Back in my day, I remember.
We got to listen to the land. Anyway, additionally, after Listen to the Land, we would always get out and immediately go to the right
Hightail it to
to
the Nook
Kitchen
Show
Cabaret.
with Bonnie Appetit.
Yes. Loved that show.
Loved that show.
I think aside from One Little Spark, the Veggie Fruit song is what my family and I sung most.
There were, that and the Boogie Woogie Bakery Boy.
Yeah, I mean, and the fact that was on that little
Oh, yeah.
medley was on sorry, I just hit the microphone. That little medley was on the official album.
That's right.
That's the part that everyone memorized,
Of
I
course.
think, because there's more to it than what is on there, of course.
But
But
everyone remembers veggie,
Yes.
fruit.
I mean,
Veggie,
I recently showed
veggie,
that
fruit.
video or a video of that to Gio, and it was
Oh,
weird
that's
to me
right.
how, like, there was a lot of like downtime and like long stretches between the songs, and I was like, whoa, I guess I'm thinking of just the medley that's on the album.
That's right. That's how they keep you interested.
Yeah.
That's when they also had ham and eggs.
His mother fell asleep in a hot tub, and his brother was born hard boiled. Anyway,
One more joke. Okay.
I do that a lot around the house.
We have fun here,
We
kids.
do have fun, and no one gets our jokes except us, I
But
guess.
that's
But you
okay.
guys probably get them if you're listening to this and our Epcot Center original fans.
That's
Who
right.
knows? But yeah, it was a fun time. And then eventually that turned into
Food Rocks.
which I'm going to go out on a limb and say was in 94.
It has to have been. Everything happened right around that time, it seemed.
Yeah. I mean, maybe around the same time if it became Living with the Land in 93.
which was essentially kind of the same idea.
It was just weirder.
It was, yeah.
Like,
I think they were trying to use more hip, more contemporary songs.
I mean,
and
Peter Gabriel was brilliant, and I will stand by that forever because that was pretty funny. The rest of it,
1994.
yeah, C94, the year of terror at Epcot. But no, Food Rocks, was okay. The Peach Boys, instead of the Beach Boys, was funny. I don't remember too much of that as much as I do.
And they had the food wrapper as well.
Yeah, Food Wrapper was funny. It was funny because then after I showed Gio the original show, we watched that, and it was funny to see how they reused a lot of the same original characters. Like,
yes. Trying to kind of go through the same, where they open the refrigerator and go through the dairy things, and then they had that oven range.
At one point in time, they said, you know what, we're going to put this ride in here, and that was Soarin.
Soarin's great.
It is
It's fun. It was fun in California,
There's land
though, too.
in it.
Yeah, I suppose. Does it fit? I mean, I suppose they made it fit, but they put Soarin' over California there, which was, I think they found that they had a popular ride at California Adventure, and they wanted it at Disney World, and they found a place to put it. And that's where it took the spot.
Yeah.
So
and
there you go.
I liked Soarin', but it was like a weird choice. And that was the first thing that I think kind of messed with the original. I mean, it wasn't the first thing because
it was certainly not.
Mission Space was already a thing at that point.
Yeah.
Journey into your imagination, and then the current iteration had already happened. But I don't know, it just felt out of place a little to me. But it is a fun,
it's a fun ride.
It's not as long as the lines were when it first came out.
Yeah.
And then of course they've updated it, but I think most people prefer the original Soarin' over California, even though they didn't call it that here ever.
I think it might be because there were less special effects. Maybe it was more genuine.
Lots
but
of
I don't know.
CGI.
Plus the original score.
Yes, the original score was always
considered very brilliant.
Yes, a fun thing to
but
listen to.
I mean, I suppose if you had to put Soarin' somewhere at Walt Disney World, and I imagine they probably really wanted it at Epcot to be included in one of its signature attractions. Where else can you put it? So
I guess. Anyway, I guess that kind of wraps up the land. Do you have any
I just really
memories? It's always fun to, I think now that's the one that you can reminisce the most in because it's relatively unchanged. The movie Symbiosis did change out to Timon and Pumbaa thing. I don't know the official name to that.
The Circle of Life.
Circle of Life, sorry. And now, of course, that will be Awesome Earth.
Awesome. I mean, the idea
Which I'm
of
excited
it.
For.
The idea of it is really good. It's just a way of showing, kind of the more education part of all that, and I suppose you can use it in the form of a film to entertain the folks.
Yeah,
I like that they're using that space, so that's good.
Yes, I do miss the original layout of the downstairs with, like you said, the hot air balloons, which marked the different seasons.
That's right.
Of the year, and then those fun tables with the umbrellas.
Well, also they had the giant fountain. Yeah,
that was a beautiful fountain.
Beautiful fountain right there in the bottom. They had to get rid of to have flow through, I suppose, of people going from the boat attraction to the Soarin'.
And just with so many things at Epcot, it changed so much crowd-wise that they really had no choice but to change some of those things.
The hot air balloons, by the way, are definitely still there.
They don't move anymore.
Yeah, they used to. They used to go up and down.
Sorry, I should have clarified that.
And
they're
also
still there, but they don't move.
And the seating downstairs used to have umbrellas as well. Kind of.
It was much more open, and now there's like
picnicky
the walls. But you needed, especially when Soarin' opened, to kind of funnel people into certain areas rather than being confused by all the tables and everything in that fountain in the middle.
That's right.
So we're going to leave the
so
land.
But the next attraction on that side to have opened up, which, as I mentioned, was in March of 1983. Do you remember what it was called?
I do.
What was that?
However, let's pretend that we're not going to go to that one.
Oh, we're going to save that one. Okay.
Because I feel like that's going to be the one I have the most to say about.
Okay, I would say then after... Okay.
No one's holding us to this factual
this doesn't matter.
Chronology.
But anyway, after Horizons opened on the first anniversary of the park, it seemed like, the future world was full. It had two attractions on both sides. Actually, one side had 3, the other one had 2. And so to kind of fill it out, the third attraction opened on the other side, and that was in January of 1986, The Living Seas.
Yes.
Which was another great one.
And this map that you have here is from 85, and it says opening January 86, The Living Seas. It's already on the map.
Well,
But
I'll tell you what.
The original one, right?
Well, here's the thing. You see this book, which came out in 1982. It came out, a first version of the Beard book, the Beard Epcot book that came out in 82, which happened before the park opened. There's a full chapter on the Living Seas. It was always going to be part of Epcot Center. So... in fact, if you look through the beginning portions of that book, there's even an artist who's kind of drawing a concept art of one of it, and the Living Seas was actually on the other side where Horizons now is. So,
imagine.
Yeah. So
those
actually kind of moved around a little bit, but then they moved it to kind of be close to the land. So you have the land and the seas.
Yes.
Next to each other.
I do remember still being here in 86. So in the last episode, I was like, I might have already been moving to Virginia, but I think it was the end of 86 that we moved here, because I remember specifically being in school when the Living Seas was going to open. I think it opened to the public on a Monday. I could be wrong with this and misremembering things.
I don't know the day of the week, so that could be.
I missed school that day. My parents took me to
that's
see
awesome.
The opening of the Living Seas.
That's great.
And then I had to tell my teacher I was sick, and we went over the weekend.
Yeah.
Maybe it was on a Friday, and I skipped that Friday. I think that's what it was. Anyway, I'm not condoning skipping school, but if you're going to do it, an educational pavilion at Epcot,
I'd say that's a pretty good reason.
Isn't a bad thing to do. So yeah, I mean, seeing in the end of those pictorial souvenirs that it was coming soon was always exciting to me. I mentioned on, I don't remember what episode we were, the history of Epcot festivals, I believe.
Could be.
Which was episode 3?
Yes.
That the Living Seas was just one of my favorite experiences because of how, it instantly took you out of Florida theme park sun and put you in the dark with wave noises. And even from the beginning, when you walked out and where the seagulls are now saying mine, there was a wave that would come out. And that was really
just very evocative of just the whole oceans and all of that.
The fun little
undulations.
Yeah, the wave.
The way
it wasn't a mosaic, but the art as you would walk into the pavilion itself. And of course, you could see Spaceship Earth in the distance behind you, so that was always fun. But when you got inside and you got to the pre-show.
The pre-show. Because there were many pre-shows.
Okay. Well,
it depends on what you're talking about. Are you talking about even just the queue that's kind of snaked around?
Oh, no. I'm just
I
was glossing over the queue.
Wow. I always enjoyed that part.
No, yeah. I liked doing the queue.
Because they always had fun kind of oceany things in there, like old
diving
bells
things.
and some old...
It's a little scary to me as a child.
And also a replica of the Nautilus was in there.
Yes, that is true.
So I do not gloss that over.
Okay.
But anyway, that does take you into the pre-show.
Yeah, which I think I said last time we talked about this that I don't really have too much memory of that. I was always just excited for the movie.
It was kind of a partial version of a 360 film in that you were in a round room and there was a screen kind of above on the sides, if you will, in the kind of like a 360 film, except they didn't use all of that area to project images onto, only portions. And it actually depended upon which of the two pre-shows you were going to go into, because they had, from that room, you would be able to go into one of two different pre-shows where they showed the sea. And so they would project images on one side, trying to basically have you all be facing that way, so that when those doors opened, you could go there.
I do vaguely remember that. So then, you would go into that movie, which was a theater that you sat in, which I always enjoyed, not having to stand up to watch a movie.
It was just a lovely film about the sea.
Yeah, and you can see the whole thing.
And
we talk about Martin's Vids a lot on here. But,
and rained.
The deluge.
And rained.
The deluge.
The deluge.
Okay.
Stop whispering.
Anyway. We talk about Martin's Vids a lot on here, but he really does have the best complete history of original all attractions, really, everything at Walt Disney World. But he will go over the original blueprints and schematics and show you where the ride was going in a thing, and then show you the actual ride. I believe in he has the whole pre-show movie.
Every iteration of all
and
That's
he'll
right.
talk about all updates to things. So
But anyway, so that film just kind of, it showed the images of the hydrolators, and then the doors opened, and there they were.
Which I recently said,
Which
it still amazed me every time I did it. It was such a fun, because that was the time when, I don't know, video was like getting much more accessible. So the fact that you had just watched a film that was like film quality movie, and then it switched to like a live shot looking image, and then you walked out and there they were.
That
they were
live
open.
shot that you were just looking at is right there.
Yeah, with the little water bubbling up between them.
The best.
Good times.
Because those were actual hydrolators that took
and
you
went
down,
way
down
into
Sea Base Alpha.
Sea Base Alpha. What a time.
Which then took you to the cabs, it was a fairly short attraction, but
it just, took you around the gigantic aquarium that they had built there, where they had created all of these kind of different environments with coral and rocks and things like that, and there was sharks and turtles and
rays,
tropical fish.
lots of fish,
stingrays.
and dolphins too.
And then the dolphins were in a separate area, so the sharks did not eat them.
That's right.
And then after the ride, you got to explore the rest of Sea Base Alpha, which, of course, the
different
tube
pods
is still there where the diver would go down.
That was so fun.
But they don't actually do that part anymore, do they?
I have not seen them do that in a while.
It's just kind of the
I mean,
tube
it's
is
still
there.
accessible. It's just still neat to be able to see an actual guy get into a little locked chamber, have it fill with water, and then have him swim up the tube and out into
crazy.
to the aquarium.
And there was always like divers in the aquarium part of it, the whatever you want to call that. I don't know if it has a
The
name.
observation area.
Sure. So you would always see divers in there, and it was fun, and they'd be feeding fish and checking on things.
That's right.
And then there was the little tidal pool area where you could like pick up starfish and things like that.
I always liked the little movie with Atlas, talking about how the oceans formed and all the different land masses kind of did their thing.
And then they had that Jason robot that went underwater, and
where you can kind of you get in there and kind of put your arms in, and
that
just to
one
see
too.
how
yes, many a
how
photo was
cumbersome
taken
that
there.
was.
And now Turtle Talk with Crush is in there, and The Living Seas with. I guess that's when we were talking about it. It was in the top 5 worst
Which
rides,
was episode 4.
Sorry if anyone stopped and ran to episode 3. That's what I was talking about, because I did not enjoy the addition of the Nemo stuff. Sorry, it's just me, because I
more
remember
okay
the
with it.
original. It's
But-
okay. But another fun part, I don't know if you ever experienced this when you visited, probably not because it was table service, was the Coral Reef restaurant.
What is this restaurant you speak of?
It's a restaurant that was on the other side
Wait,
of the
What?
tank that you could see, and they would usually always have a diver in there, and that side you could see.
I did not ever eat there in my olden days, but I have since been. Yes.
Yeah, we went there a few times when I was younger. I always enjoyed it, and then it had a reputation for not having good food, but I think it's okay now. It's just always fun it's a fun experience to be in there and see
I agree.
the fish.
Get some good views of the aquarium.
You've got the best lounge.
Yes, I was just going to say that. Then on the other side of the tank, if you are so lucky to go to the
It's actually on the same
VIP.
side, just above it.
Oh, my bad.
That's okay.
I'm not good with directions, I've been told.
No worries. It's directly above the restaurant.
Directly above the restaurant. That's right. Like, I've been in there from that elevator. That's dumb that I forgot that. Oh,
Don't worry about it.
Anyway, you can experience, which there's been a lot of special events in there. So I think of the lounges, the original Future World lounges, that's probably the one most people have been in and seen the clear
But
piano.
it's
that's
still
in
very
there.
fun. It's
Yeah,
still
no,
a fun
it's
environment.
super fun. You can get married in there or have a reception in there, whatever, all sorts of fun things. And that was originally sponsored by United Technologies.
That's right.
It is not any longer.
No.
But you can still see the remnants of.
At the
some of
time,
those
United
sponsors.
Technologies was head up of Otis Elevators,
Ah, yes.
which is where the Otis Elevator Company came from.
And the
Good
Scott
times.
Otis came from.
There is a history of me with the Otis
Found.
Elevator Company, but
Yes, he was
well,
found
it
in
was
an
Elijah
elevator.
Otis, but he's a distant relative.
Yeah, and earlier we were talking about your desire to be a landscape architect, which is also in your history.
That's right.
Your distant relation to Frederick Law Olmsted,
That's true.
who designed the Biltmore Estate grounds and
Central Park. Yeah.
Fun times. Anyway, we're getting off topic.
Quite.
So, living with the land. Wow. Okay.
This is the Living Seas.
The Living Seas was a fun place, and you can still experience some of the original stuff there, which is always a bonus.
What would have been a nice bonus to keep is if we still had to take the hydrolators to get
Yeah.
back, but those are gone.
Did not change in '94.
When did that change?
2007.
Yeah, it was much more recent because Finding Nemo, the movie, didn't come out until May of
That's
2005. No, wait. Is that right?
Well,
I might need to.
2003.
Sorry, May of 2003.
it's okay. We're,
We're just winging
we're
it here.
constantly known for having someone look stuff up while we're talking about it now, I guess.
That's right.
So yeah, it was a fun original pavilion. Well, not original pavilion, but when it came out,
I consider
it
it one of the originals, if
Yeah.
you will, because that was the last one, and then that was before Wonders of Life, which we might actually need to go back to.
was. This was the original Epcot, which I consider the seas to be more of that than the
I know,
Wonders of Life.
I do, but I pretty much consider everything pre-1994 to be part of original
All
Epcot.
right. Well, we can
And that
hop back
opened
over to that at some point.
That opened in '89, so
Okay. When we do the rest of the Communicores, we'll
okay.
hop into that. So that takes us to my favorite attraction of all time. I don't think it's yours, but that's okay. Journey into
Oh,
Imagination.
I very much love this one.
I know, but it's not like your favorite. I was just the right
It was up there.
age and the right, makeup of my person to fall head over heels in love with this
It's
attraction.
a big part of it, absolutely.
Just walking in and seeing that crystal elevator that was there. Also, just even
the
from
pyramids.
the outside, the pyramids that you could see through. It was
I love
so,
the pyramids, and that the tops of the pyramids had like a
Yeah.
little slice taken out of them.
Mm-hmm.
That, to me,
It was very visually enticing.
yes, very.
And the fact that outside there was that waterfall that went up. We called it the up waterfall.
What's funny is my first visit, I didn't get that. It wasn't until my second visit I looked at that waterfall and I said, "Wait a minute,
yeah.
the water's going up." For some reason, I missed that the first time. I guess I was playing in the fountains too much.
Probably. We'll get to the fountains outside after, I guess.
Indeed.
But walking in and you see the elevator and the mural on the wall and the purple ride vehicles coming around. I just knew. I mean, this was really if you want to describe me as a person back then, I was into collecting stickers. I had like various sticker books, Lisa Frank, unicorns, the whole thing. The Last Unicorn was a movie that I loved. That's just, it was everything I was about. And this attraction fulfilled all of my unknown desires and dreams at that point in my life. So taking the ride around the corner and seeing, of course, the Dreamcatcher machine.
Yeah.
With Figment. Well, Figment was not yet.
Well,
sorry.
Dreamfinder, and that's explaining the birth of Figment, if you will.
I still have the entire Dreamfinder monologue memorized.
And
I can do
we
in a
hear
fun
it all the
accent.
time.
I will spare you all that. But, it is in my repertoire.
I'm just great.
So it was instantly, you had no choice but to look at it because of the way the ride was set up. But it was still interesting to me, even though that wasn't like my realm of interest in Disney rides, the technical aspects of it. But seeing that like the walls came up on either side of you and realizing like, oh, there's more than just us watching this. It's going around, and that was like
giant turntable. Yeah.
Very early me figuring stuff out and being interested in it. And then of course Figment appears, and he's adorable and cute and fun and playful.
He just wants to make more and more new fun ideas.
Yes, but first we must store these ideas with the others in the Dreamport.
And that's when things got.
Are we almost there? The Dreamport is never far away when you use your imagination. Okay. So you turned into the journey to the Dreamport, I guess. Or maybe that whole
went right
thing
to the
was
Dreamport,
the Dreamport. There was all these different sections of different types of imagination.
Yeah.
And there was, and the ride track went like up little hills.
It was
and
essentially
things like
kind
that.
of like a little roller coaster car that just didn't have a lot of
speed.
So there were ups and downs and turns left and right.
And at one point you went by like a storage facility for like scents, different types of scents. There was giggles in a applause where the hands
with lots
would
of
come
hands.
up.
Yeah.
But one of the scents in the perfume was like a rose scent. And that has stayed with me my entire life. It is ingrained in my brain. And, I used to only wear like rose water and rose scented perfume like all through high school. And I still just love the scent of that. I have rose water mist that I spray on my face. And every time I spray it, I'm like, imagination.
Your daughter's name is Sophia Rose.
Well, yeah, that was, I wasn't that. That wasn't why, but
I'm gonna say it was.
Maybe subconsciously.
But then that took you into probably the most beautiful room anywhere.
Yes,
the white room with rainbows, where Figment.
The music changed when you got into that room to a much more like sing-songy, wispy kind of music. I guess I don't know if that's the right way to describe it, but
I don't know.
Yeah, it was a little more classic. No one was speaking at that time. Figment was just showing you his pot of rainbows, and it was all white paper cutouts, and
there
was a carousel.
The carousel of the different white cutout character or animals.
It was so relaxing and beautiful, and there was nothing to gain for it didn't serve a purpose. It was just beautiful.
It wasn't trying to promote anything. It was just it was just beautiful in its simplicity.
Yes. And then after that, I think was when you went into
that's when things got a little scary. Right? Yes.
And then the raven and the book with the cawing of the raven, that was always super cool.
Yeah, all kind of, because
ghost
it definitely
stories.
got to be a lot darker. There was Figment kind of trying to keep that door closed with the
Yes.
the
Yeah, and
tentacles trying to get through.
that was one of the fun parts, is that you would see Figment in different places throughout the ride doing
yeah.
something or figuring out, what was going on.
Because apparently he's imagined all of these things, right? I
don't
guess,
know.
or is he just dealing with them?
I think that's just
using
what's
his
there.
imagination.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Let's not get too deep into Figment's psyche. And then after that, you went into...
I'd say the theater portion.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And there was costumes and sets, songs and romances.
That's right.
Or something.
They had the little laser.
Yes, that was
things
very technologically advanced back then.
Oh, yes.
Seeing the lasers form different shapes, musical notes, and the theater masks on the screen. And then after that, you ended up in the... But what about science?
That's what I was just about to say. But what about science?
And you went through a little tunnel thing, which was always fun.
Yes.
And that was... Oh, then you went through the room that showed
the plants.
the life cycles of plants. And Dreamfinder was controlling it and making things grow and die.
Grow fast.
And then
Which
grow again.
used a lot of the art, or I guess movie techniques that Walt Disney had perfected in his True Life Adventures
time-lapse stuff.
series. Yeah, where they did a lot of time-lapse photography on the germination of flowers and plants and things like that. So that was fun to see.
Yeah. And then after that, was that the end where you got to the room with Figment?
Yep.
So then that was the end, and there was another circular room, but it was Figment in all of the screens.
That's right.
Which was always just a fun, upbeat, happy way to end it, because he was doing, he was like skiing the Alps.
He was a cowboy.
He was a cowboy.
Riding a horse.
It was just very fun and silly. And yeah, I mean, that...
Just
as I
basically
mentioned
showcasing
before,
him, using his imagination to come up with all of these fun ideas.
Yes, and I cried a lot when I had to leave that. There was also, at one point, I think when you went into the science room, they took your photo.
Oh, that's right.
And then at the
one point,
end,
yeah.
there was Dreamfinder with his little movie camera, and there was a screen that would show you your on-ride photo.
Which I think at that time was very new to us.
Yeah, and because it was sponsored by Kodak. So
It was just neat to see us.
it was, and it wasn't a good quality photo or whatever.
And it was a very strange angle, almost kind of like an overhead shot.
And unless you knew it was coming, you didn't look good. But of course, having ridden it several thousand times, we always did a funny pose for it. And even there's some photos I have of us taking a photo of the photo, which is not the best quality at all, but it was still a fun thing to do.
Oh yeah.
And then
Where did that take you?
Figment was waiting on the wall when you got off. It said, "Follow me to the Image Works."
Oh my goodness.
And so
That was the best thing to do.
You got off the ride, and you could go up the crystal elevator, or you could go up the escalators.
That's right, the escalators, which was also, I guess you would experience those in malls and department stores, so that wasn't a new thing. But I liked how thin they were. But I always took the staircase that went around the elevator.
That's right. Yeah, I did do that.
That was a lot of fun.
And
But that took you to the second floor.
Yeah.
Underneath those same pyramids that you saw.
And you could see out
from the
a little
outside.
bit.
Oh, quite a bit.
And then, there was so many fun things to do in the Image Works. There was a little bubble thing, and then
Bubble music. That's right.
there was a lot of different weird globes, and that you could like clap your hands and it would like change colors and stuff like that.
Yeah, I like the wall where you could, from one side, you can just act out things, but if you had some friends on the other side, they would kind of see you in digitized form.
That was always fun.
And then the stepping tones was always fun.
I loved
They
that
had so
part.
many different things. And of course, the infamous Rainbow Corridor, where supposedly you could enter and there would be a color that you would kind of be assigned as you walked in, and that color would follow you wherever you went.
So glad you said that. I was just looking it up in the Birnbaum book because I don't even know where it is. But I remember reading that in here.
Oh, yeah.
and thinking that's what was going to happen and being like so excited. But that isn't really what happened. Like, it didn't.
Well,
It was
if you
just-
maintained a certain pace, it would have happened. It didn't necessarily sense you, and then if you went backwards, it would also go backwards. It essentially traveled at a very consistent rate.
Upon entering the Rainbow Corridor, a tunnel full of neon tubes in all the hues of the rainbow, every guest is assigned a color, and the lights of that color are illuminated as he or she passes by.
I think it was originally intended to do that.
I was so excited for that, and I mean, I was still okay that it didn't happen. Like, I still
it was
loved
so
going
beautiful. Oh my gosh, I loved going
in there. I
through
would go
there.
in and go back out and go back in. It was just a pretty place. It was fun.
It really was.
And then, of course, the Dreamfinders drama, whatever that was called.
The School of Drama?
Yes, Dreamfinder School of Drama, which was at the time, very technologically advanced with
Using the
chroma
green
key,
green screen
screen.
technology, yeah. Basically putting you in there in a different place, like in an Old West
Yeah.
with Dreamfinder, or in different circumstances.
It was very fun and funny to see what you looked like on screen, because you had to do like the opposite, because you were looking at yourself in a monitor, and
And now everybody jump.
yeah, and jumping over trains. It was very silly and fun.
Yes.
And they could certainly do that again
Just with yeah.
much bigger
The
technology.
current version of the ImageWorks is
No,
there's nothing
Not
there.
worth mentioning.
I wouldn't even. Yeah, it could be redone again, and in that same space, same space.
I mean,
to be honest,
there's no reason why it can't be done.
and of course, I enjoyed also the pin boards where you put your
Pinboards.
hand underneath.
I have a traumatic experience memory of that.
No.
If my mother's listening, she probably is. But at one point, we were going through, and I was doing the pinboard, and my mom came up from behind me and smacked my hand up
no.
underneath because she thought it would be funny.
That's not funny at all.
It really hurt my hand. Like, obviously, it didn't go through my hand because they're like dull. They're not. They're
Yeah,
big
yeah.
and dull. They weren't like actual needles or pins. But it was very traumatic, mostly because I was startled by it, not because like I was actually in pain. But that's ingrained in my brain now.
That's how lives are formed.
It's okay, Mom. I'm not holding a grudge. Don't worry.
But then they also had the beautiful kaleidoscopes that you could look
Yeah,
through
they
and
had the
kind
kaleidoscope things, and then
change the
the
shapes.
painting with
Yes.
pigment,
with the electronic fountain
which
pen.
could totally be done.
Absolutely. I mean, back
at the
then,
time, it was
yeah,
unheard of.
yeah, using touchscreen technology that was
and,
absolutely
changing
unheard
the
of at
colors,
the time.
and you could make Figment whatever color
So.
you wanted, and it was super fun. And then they had the thing where you could conduct the orchestra
Mm-hmm.
with lights that were shining on the top of your hands.
That's right.
I think that was it in the image.
That was quite a lot, though.
Yeah. And then, of course, outside,
Oh my gosh,
you could go to see Magic Journeys.
which I loved.
I always loved it too. It was,
It was
looking at it now, it's weird, but it was a
It was
different
a weird
time back
trip.
then. And I don't think anyone came out of that being like, well, maybe parents did. I don't know. But as a kid, I was like, this was great. And it was 3D.
I did get scared with the witch
Yeah.
trying to electrocute me
Hmm.
with the little sparks. That was a little scary.
And then, of course, the jumping fountains
Oh
outside,
yes,
which
I
was
always left
amazing.
that area completely soaked
Me too.
because it was perfect stream, tubes of water that were flying over us.
It was so fun to just even watch. And then, I mean, you could stand under it and not get wet at all. But
Oh,
then
yeah.
if you jumped or put your arms like up through it, then you would get
I always
completely
tried
soaked.
to angle my hand in just such a way where I'd get my sisters soaked.
I'm sure you did.
But then I would always get soaked in the meantime. Oh well.
And then the little tiny, there was a Figment topiary,
That's right.
which is not still there, the topiary, but I think those little tiny fountains are still
Where
there.
they
just
would
do
little
like a
drops
little
would pop up and you'd
And
try
you-
to catch them.
Well, I wouldn't try to catch them. I would hit them and then get other people wet. But yeah, it was a fun experience. I mean, we talked all about the remodels of it, the refurbs in that
We did.
worst rides episode, so I'm not going to go into that. But
It
needless to
was-
say, it really did mold my childhood, and I don't know. It's just, every
It was such a good
child
time.
needs imagination and needs dreams. And that was a great place to see that, hey, dreams and imagination are good and they're okay. And they're a part of, like, an important part of the world, because
And-
everything else in there was so serious and,
Yes.
actual, like, transportation and communication and energy. This was, like, whimsical and fun and much needed.
And it was great that it was embodied in the character of Figment, who is simply just a very curious character who just wanted to imagine
Yeah.
fun and new things. So,
And, the walk around Dreamfinder with
Oh,
his
that's
Figment friend was always if he was ever there and I was there, I took a photo with him. And years later, I met Ron Schneider, who was one of the people that portrayed the Dreamfinder.
Yep.
Steven Tyler, I think Taylor is the other one.
I don't recall, but okay.
I follow him on Facebook. He's a very nice guy. And meeting Ron Schneider was like me meeting Elvis for an older generation. I cried. But I'm trying to keep it together for this podcast, so I'm trying not to get too emotional about things.
It was
but
a great attraction.
it really was,
A
and I
great
think that's
pavilion,
why
yeah.
it was so heartbreaking when they did change it. And I do have
Yeah.
high hopes that Figment will return to his former glory.
That's the great thing about Imagineering, is that if something gets put on the drawing board or shelved away or there's always time for something to be brought back. And so whatever great ideas they may have come up with to change it into, they can still do that.
Yes,
So-
I agree. And I think I said this in my love letter to EPCOT as well, that part of the difficulty in growing up with EPCOT and seeing the changes is you have to wonder, were some of the changes that were made because people were actually bored, quote unquote, or
I don't know.
attendance was low, or was attendance low because of other reasons, like they weren't updating at all, and then they make these sweeping changes thinking this is what people want, but is it what people want?
It's hard for me to
it's
think
the
that people
never-ending-
wanted that.
Right.
So
Or even just the sponsors
Yeah.
wanting something different.
That's true too. I
the
mean, I
whole-
think that was
the
the
whole
case with
idea
that.
of Epcot being, it was $1 billion park when it first opened in 1982, and a lot of that did come from the corporate sponsors.
Yeah.
And that idea is very difficult without that corporate sponsorship, and that model, if you will, is kind of isn't really what's going on as much
Well,
anymore.
in this day and age, I think Disney can do whatever they want to
Disney's
do.
got a pretty healthy pocketbook, I
They
say.
do. If they wanted
They've got a
to
few dollars.
recreate original Epcot somewhere else, brick for brick, they could do that and
Yeah.
not lose any money on it. But that's another conversation. I think it would go over great, but that's just me. They'd have a few attendees.
Oh yeah.
So we are now, I guess, going back to Wonders of Life, or do you want to go to the Communicores?
Let's touch on Wonders of Life. That was a fun addition. I believe that opened in '88 or '89. I think it was '88 actually. We'll have our people look into that.
Seconds.
I want to guess May of '88, but
Yeah.
we'll see. But anyway, anything?
Well,
89.
89.
Oh, there you go. I do remember seeing all kinds of fun advertisements for that in magazines where they were talking about that.
Because it was MetLife was the sponsor,
MetLife,
which at the
yeah.
time was having a very large ad campaign with Snoopy and all that.
Yes.
So
So
they
it,
had a lot of brand awareness, I think, already.
but kind of going up the hill and then approaching that golden dome, if you will, it definitely had a lighter tone to it than all of the other Future World attractions.
Well, let's see. In '89, I was a sophomore or junior in high school.
Sure.
So I wasn't, and I also wasn't living in Florida at that time. I was in Massachusetts
Okay.
again. So I did not visit that as often, or, Disney in general as often. So when I did go there, it was new and interesting to me to see that. but I don't know. It didn't have the same feel to me as the original
I
pavilions.
can see that.
Obviously, it wasn't made in the same time. So
Right. It was a few years after, but it
Yeah.
was the next expansion after the Living Seas.
I don't think it was, out of place or anything. It
Certainly
just,
not. It was always intended to have a life and health pavilion in Future World, and so it finally came to be with this one. And I very much enjoyed the Body Wars attraction, which used the same simulator technology as Star Tours did.
Yes.
I thought it was a little bumpier
Yes,
than,
that one
than
was
Star
much more
Tours.
rough. I didn't go on that as often.
And I
as
think a
result.
lot of people had also issues with the general concept of entering a human body and like going through the lungs and the brain and the heart.
I was fine with that.
Some people
There was a
they get
movie
nauseous about that kind of
that
thing.
did that.
Inner Space?
Before that, but
Oh.
Inner Space was the one that made it like fun and cool. But I think before that there was like a weird old movie
Oh, okay.
that was also going inside the human body.
Hmm.
I don't know.
So.
But of course, Cranium Command was the real draw
Yes,
for me.
the Cranium Command was the best. That basically going into the brain of an adolescent boy and going through a typical day of his with all kinds of travails and things like that.
It was so many different styles of, I don't know, visuals, I guess, as you were walking in. The pre-show was like traditional animation, and you were learning about these commandos
Cranium Commandos.
cranium commandos that were going into various human brains, and they would be deposited, and then the humans, when they came on screen, was more of like that weird kind of stop motiony looking Monty
Yes.
Python-esque
Very
type
Monty
animation.
Python-esque, yeah, where it would lift their heads and then
Yeah.
insert these commandos into them.
And then when you got inside, you were in the head of the person, so
Yes.
your eyes were
You could
like
see the
screens
eyes.
were the eyes of the person.
Yes.
And then it was all live action people.
A
like the
lot of
various parts
stars
yeah.
from various things like Saturday Night Live and things like that
Yes.
with Charles Grodin, Dana Carvey,
Yes.
and Bobcat Goldthwait, and
Norm
others.
from Cheers.
Yes.
George Wendt.
Mm-hmm.
But then, of course, Buzzy, who you had seen in the pre-show, was an animatronic little.
That's right. Kind of
being.
controlling all of these different functions within the brain.
Yes.
And just to me, that was just a fun show. And general knowledge was always a fun character also. So
Yes.
that was fun. And then, of course, they had The Making of Me with Martin Short, a movie about the creation of a human child. That was a very
Yeah.
touchy subject. I remember they had kind of warnings
I
outside
feel
the
like I
theater
only-
saying that they were actually going to show a live human birth, which was a very something that you don't often see.
I
in
feel
a
like
theme
I
park.
only saw that once because I was just like at that age, and like with my parents, I was like, this is not what I want to be watching with my mom.
But they did it in a very tasteful way, and they kind of the actual conception of a child is done in animated form with lots of guys racing through.
Okay.
So anyway,
There was also fun activities
Oh, come on.
in the area, like the little bikes that could bike through. There would be a screen, and you could.
and
bike
one
through
of them
different
was bicycling through Disneyland, which to me
Yes.
was always my favorite. Except I would always, since I wanted to get through as much of it as possible, I had to bike faster, which got me more tired,
things. Oh,
and I usually
yes.
got sick at the end.
Yeah. Oh well,
well.
that's not good.
Well, not sick physically. It's just like, I shouldn't have done that.
The whole rest of that area was very, to me, seeming like, a science museum type of like fun little
Yes.
displays, like hold this cold pole and hold this hot pole, and then you'll feel weird. And so yeah, but it was a fun thing, and there was Goofy's something school where
Oh, that's right.
they showed Goofy shorts.
Using old Goofy shorts, they were talking about the do's and don'ts of life.
Yeah.
Like, don't smoke cigarettes, don't drink alcohol,
Yes.
but do exercise. So things like that. That was a lot of fun too. And then the anatomical players, which was a stage show with comedic actors, kind of doing some
I
fun
never
things. I believe
did that.
Wayne Brady actually came from there.
Wow.
Yeah. Who knew?
I guess you told me that before. So yeah, and now that is becoming the Play Pavilion, so we'll have to see what the future holds.
That's right.
For that. So we'll have to, we're realizing as we discuss our memories and histories and all this fun stuff that we need more time to do this.
We kind of drone on about things.
We're going to have to do a part 3 that will touch on the Communicore sections that we missed, and we'll also do World Showcase. But because I want that episode to be just as exciting and thrilling as all of these episodes have been, I think we're also going to throw in some history of the nighttime spectaculars at World Showcase.
Because I believe we're encountering a new change with that soon.
Yes. Epcot Forever will be opening in just a few days, or probably already
by
open
this time.
by the time you're listening to this. So yeah, we're, Epcot will never be finished being discussed, but for now, we're done with this part. So you'll have to come back again to hear even more Epcot memories, history, and fun. Subscribe to iTunes, wherever you listen to podcasts, Up the Waterfall. Subscribe and like and comment on YouTube if you're watching us there.
Yes, we'd love to see your comments or questions.
Yeah. Rate us on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts so more people can discover us, hopefully. Zannaland.com will have all of these links and fun information for you.
Yes.
Follow the show on Instagram. Stay tuned for another episode next week. If you have any comments, any questions, things we forgot, things that you're like, how did you not mention this?
Oh, that's right.
Leave us a comment wherever you're listening to this, and we'll find it and respond.
We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks for listening or watching if you're watching, and we'll see you next time.
Up the waterfall.
That is absolutely fantastic.
Well, that's only part of it. I got a big climatic scene.
But how could you top it?
Well, we set the place on fire, and we have our audience trapped down in this flaming city.
And how can they get out then?
Well, now you got into this mess by going down a waterfall. Now, how would you suppose we get them out of there?
By going up the waterfall?
That's right. Anything's possible in Disneyland.